"Come with me, you need to see this yourself." That's what the old security guard said. Quiet. Uneasy. Like he wished he didn't have to be the one to say it. I had just paid for our things. My wife had stepped aside to take a call, nothing strange about that. Until this. I followed him, heart suddenly heavy for no reason I could name. We turned a corner near the dressing rooms. He pointed to a live surveillance feed playing on a back monitor. And that's when I saw her. My wife, the woman I had shared 17 years and 2 kids with, pressed up against the wall, laughing into the phone. Flirting. With someone else. Her voice carried through the thin wall. I told him I was on the phone with the school. He's so easy. I didn't say a word. "Hi, my name is Nolan Chase, and I used to think that being loyal meant never checking the shadows. That trust meant peace." But standing there, watching her twirl her hair while she whispered, "Just one more night and then I'll tell him," I realized I'd been living in a house built on my own blind spots. The guard looked at me like he'd seen this before. "I figured you'd want to know." I nodded. My hands didn't shake. I walked back out calmly, placed the shopping bags in the car, and when she returned, smiling like nothing happened, I kissed her forehead. Because she had no idea. I had already started the timer. She slid into the passenger seat, still glowing from whatever lie she'd told. "Sorry," she said casually. "School stuff." I smiled. "No problem. Everything good?" She nodded, leaned over, kissed my cheek, and not a hint of guilt touched her voice. But inside me, something had shifted. I didn't rage. I didn't press her. I observed. That night, I lay beside her in bed, wide awake, memorizing her breathing patterns, the way she clutched her phone under the pillow like it needed protection. I had questions, 1,000 of them. But I also had discipline. And that's what makes a man dangerous. I again, Nolan Chase. I spent 7 years as a military analyst before I ever entered construction management. You learn to see things most people don't. Inconsistencies. Gaps. Behavioral tells. And my wife. Suddenly she was full of them. The new gym bag she never unpacked. The mystery volunteer nights. The perfume that didn't match what she used to wear. The locked phone screen she used to leave open. But I said nothing. Instead, I rebuilt something quietly, a log. I tracked every outing, every excuse, every shift in tone. And then I called in a favor from an old friend, a digital forensic consultant I once helped through a custody battle. Within 2 days, I had access to every deleted message, every cloud-stored voice note. The voice I heard wasn't just hers. It was his. And the next file was a photo, timestamped just 12 minutes after I paid for our groceries that day. She was in the store. But she wasn't alone. The photo stopped me cold. It wasn't the angle. It wasn't even what they were doing, just a whisper of space between them, his hand barely brushing hers near the dressing room corridor. It was her face. Relaxed. Lit up. That subtle half-smile she used to give me before we had kids, before bills, before life hardened around us like concrete. And now it belonged to someone else. I stared at it longer than I should have. I, Nolan Chase again. A man learning in real time what betrayal actually feels like. Not the movie version. No explosions, no shouting. Just this cold, quiet nausea that starts behind your ribs and never quite leaves. I didn't confront her. I upgraded my plan. First, I hired a family law attorney, discreet, effective, and trained in pre-litigation investigation. We opened a folder. Built a timeline. Next, I met with our financial advisor and asked one simple question. If a marital asset is being moved in secret, how early can we trace it? His reply? Depends how clever she thinks she is. Turns out, not very. She had been siphoning off small amounts from our joint account, transferring to a private debit card under the name of a fake LLC. The name of the LLC? Matched his initials. I didn't flinch. I signed the documents. Froze the joint accounts. Transferred the house deed, legally protected through a clause we'd signed years ago when my father co-signed the loan. She couldn't sell it. Couldn't leverage it. She didn't know yet. But I had already erased the safety net she thought she'd stolen. And in 3 days, she'd walk into the meeting that would change everything. Because I invited them both. I reserved a quiet conference room at a downtown co-working space. Clean, professional, forgettable. 2 chairs across from mine. 1 legal pad. 1 envelope. She thought we were meeting a potential investor for my business. He thought he was showing up to discuss expansion plans. Neither knew the meeting was with me. They arrived together. Not holding hands, but close enough that the lie was no longer careful. He wore a blazer. She wore the same perfume I bought her for our anniversary last year. I stood when they entered. Her face drained instantly. He froze like a rookie deer on a rifle range. Sit, I said. They did. Hi again. Nolan Chase. And no, I didn't yell. I didn't throw the envelope across the table like in some courtroom drama. I slid it forward. Inside, bank statements, text logs, photos, the LLC filing with his initials. Her digital fingerprint on every transfer. She didn't open it. I can explain, she whispered. I'm not here for an explanation, I replied. I'm here to end the story you two started behind my back. He leaned forward, trying to sound calm. You have no right to ambush us. I laughed. Not loud. Just once. You ambushed a marriage. I'm just returning the favor, legally. Then I stood. I've already filed for separation. The house is frozen. The bank account is under investigation for fraud. And you, I looked at him, should probably call a lawyer before the IRS does. She was shaking now. Not from fear. From finally realizing I wasn't bluffing. But what neither of them knew was that someone else had been watching this play out quietly. And she had just booked a flight. The someone else was my sister, Rachel. Divorce attorney. Single mom. Zero tolerance for betrayal, especially when it involved me. She booked a flight the minute I sent her the files. No questions. No lectures. Just one message. Don't let her spin the narrative. I'll be there Thursday. And she was. Hi, Nolan Chase again, watching my world burn slowly and learning how to stand in the smoke without blinking. By the time Rachel arrived, the first wave had already hit. My wife tried to regain control, texting mutual friends, feeding them some vague story about emotional distance and misunderstandings. Not cheating. Not fraud. Just unhappiness. But I'd already sent the truth ahead of her. Facts. Documents. Proof. One friend called and said, Nolan, if this is true, she just nuked her own life. I didn't reply. I didn't need to. Rachel and I met with my attorney Friday morning. She brought new paperwork, ones that accelerated the process. Emergency orders. Asset protection clauses. Custody arrangements preemptively outlined in case she tried to involve the kids. Then she looked at me across the table and asked, Are you doing this for payback or peace? It hit me. This wasn't just about catching them. It was about becoming someone else on the other side of it. I said, Peace. She nodded. Then let's finish this clean. That evening, my wife showed up at the house, the one she no longer had access to, and found the locks changed, the security code reset, and a formal letter taped to the door. She stood on the porch for 10 minutes. Didn't knock. Just cried into her hands. But the cameras caught everything, and the footage would matter more than she ever expected. Because on Monday morning, her employer would receive it. Her employer was a private healthcare group. And their ethics clause? Crystal clear. Any employee involved in financial misconduct, patient trust violations, or reputational harm may be subject to investigation and suspension. She didn't just cheat. She used the company's travel card to pay for 2 of their weekend trips, booked under a training conference that never existed. And I had the receipts. Hi again, Nolan Chase. And if you're wondering whether this was revenge, you're not paying attention. This was accountability. Nothing more. Nothing less. When she was called into HR, she tried to spin it, said I was retaliating, said it was marital drama spilling into her professional life. But policy doesn't care about feelings. It cares about evidence. She was placed on immediate leave. Investigation pending. Her voice message to me that night was 6 minutes long. Started with blame. Then begging. Then silence. And then finally, rage. You don't get to destroy me just because you're hurt. I didn't respond. I was sitting with my kids watching a movie, something we hadn't done in months without her mood swinging the room sideways. They laughed. Ate popcorn. Safe. Steady. And that's when I knew. This was the life I'd protect. Not the one I lost. The next day, I met with my lawyer and Rachel one last time. Everything was in motion. Division of assets, custody petitions, protection orders. But then Rachel pulled out one last file. She slid it across the table. You ready to see what he's been hiding? She asked. I blinked. I thought we got everything. She shook her head. Not this. What I saw in those pages changed everything. Because it turns out he didn't just betray me. He betrayed the wrong family entirely. The file Rachel gave me? It contained records from 3 states, public databases, court filings, and something that sent a chill down my spine. A restraining order. Filed 4 years ago by another woman, under her maiden name. Against him. Same man. Different city. Same patterns. It accused him of coercion, financial manipulation, and emotional abuse. The case never made headlines. Settled out of court. Buried. But it existed. And Rachel had it. I again, Nolan Chase. And in that moment, I stopped being the man who just wanted peace. Because now it wasn't just about me. This man had a history. I made one call, to her employer's HR department. I didn't tell them everything. Just the public link. The court record. And then I sat back and watched the last thread unravel. Her suspension turned permanent within 48 hours. Not just for the false charges, but because she brought a predator into a protected space. She called me from a prepaid number that night. Please, you've done enough. I answered calmly. No. I haven't done anything. I just stopped covering for you. Then I hung up. The next morning, the man finally reached out himself. No threats. Just a single message. Let's meet. I showed it to Rachel. She said, he's trying to gauge your weakness. Don't give him any. So I didn't reply. Instead, I called a former client of mine, someone who worked in private security and risk mitigation. He owed me a favor. Within hours, the man who'd thought he was just dating a married woman was served with a legal complaint and a cease and desist tied to financial entanglement and prior conduct. His silence after that spoke louder than any apology. But there was still one final moment left. Because my wife had just requested to see me, in person. She arrived 10 minutes early. No makeup. No rings. Just the same woman I'd married 17 years ago, only now stripped of the mask she'd worn for the last 2. We sat across from each other in the same cafe where we once chose our kids' names over coffee and pancakes. She looked exhausted. I know I don't deserve kindness, she said quietly. I didn't answer. I didn't think you'd find out, she added. Not because you're dumb. Just because you trusted me too much. I nodded once. Hi, Nolan Chase again, sitting across from a ghost in my wife's body, realizing that the real betrayal wasn't the affair, or the lies, or even the money. It was how easily she gambled us for someone who wouldn't even defend her once things unraveled. She reached into her purse and slid something across the table. A photo. Our wedding day. You can tear it up, burn it. I just didn't want to be the only one looking at it anymore. I stared at the photo. 2 kids smiling at forever, completely unaware how fragile that word really is. Then I folded it and placed it in my jacket. I'm not here to punish you, I said. But I'm also not here to save you. She bit her lip. Tears finally came. Will you ever forgive me? I stood up. I already did. That's how I let go. She didn't follow me out. She just sat there, crying over the version of her life she never thought she'd lose. I got into my car, turned on the engine, and drove home to my kids. Home to truth. Not revenge. Just clarity. Because the difference between a storm and a reset is what you choose to build afterward. And I had already started.